So let's wrap up everything that we have learned about social construction of health and illness, and even going back to section 3, what we learned about social construction of deviance. In this section, we talked about how health and illness are socially constructed. So let's go over those 5 points again. We don't necessarily have or possess an illness. Many of these illnesses and definitions of health, as we know it, are constructed by culture. They're cultural definitions about what constitutes health or illness. And the constructedness of this reality is made invisible by the normal workings of everyday life. And we saw that, just advertisements for medication, websites for support groups. These are all elements in this construction of health and illness. The third point, based on the Thomas theorem, is even though these things are constructed and not real, unquote, they're very real in their consequences, particularly the labels of healthy, normal, sick, or abnormal. They're very real in their consequences. Points 4 and 5 point to historical change and cultural variation. That's how sociologists really point to how these realities are constructed and not inherent as part of the human experience. So many of these illnesses simply didn't exist 20 years ago. They've even come up in my lifetime, and they will continue to change throughout our lifetime. And many cultures don't have these illnesses. They simply don't exist in their culture. Shyness, for example, ADHD absolutely does not exist in Asia. These are cultural definitions. So going back to medicalization, medicalization, remember, is a process. Remember, that means a slow change. It's evolutionary change by which non-medical problems and non-medical issues become defined in terms of medical problems, usually in terms of illnesses or disorders, thereby giving scientific and clinical experts the authority, very important word there, the authority to solve the problem within the boundaries of medical practice. So now control over this aspect of your life, which up to this point may have been through family members or the legal system or religious authority, now we're handing over many parts of our lives, or control of many parts of our lives, to the medical field. That means pharmaceuticals and clinicians, mental health experts. Remember, type 1 is from badness to sickness. Things that we used to say were personal irresponsibility on the part of the individual now are redefined as illnesses that the person possesses. Type 2, normal life events being turned into or redefined or socially constructed as medical problems. Here's some examples of type 1, how disruptive behavior in the classroom or at home, etc., is now redefined as attention deficit disorder. Sexual misconduct or irresponsibility is now sex addiction. Irresponsible gambling, now gambling addiction. Impotence, now redefined as erectile dysfunction disorder. Menopause, we talked about. Shortness is now an illness. Shyness, part of everyday life, is now redefined as social anxiety disorder. And by the way, note how often you see the word disorder. That simply means that somebody is not acting in ways that we expect them to act. We like predictability. We talked about that in the first section. All of this means, wrapping up everything that we've learned, is I want you to try to see this through the prism of social control, attempts by society to regulate people's thoughts and behavior. So this is entirely up to you how you want to respond to this, but I just want to introduce you to the concept of medicalization as a form of social control.